Right, let's start with a joke. Okay. This is what is known as a T-shirt joke in the business, if you like. There was a man, and he had a lot of problems in his life, and he decided, I think I'll go and see a medium and see if I can get some advice about what to do. So he found this medium, went to see her, she gave him a reading, and he thought, that doesn't make sense, that's a load of rubbish. You know, you're fake. So he told this to the medium, and she wasn't very pleased with him, and although she wasn't very big, she started attacking him. And she attacked him so much she killed him. And she panicked then and went off on the run, and then the police discovered his body, and they issued a statement. And this is what they said. Warning, small, medium, at large. That's why it's called a T-shirt joke, obviously. Talking of which, I've got loads of T-shirts I'm trying to get rid of, so if you're interested in having the latest fashion, they're over there. Anyway, let's go on to the next bit. Still on the present with humans and what we do. So, yet another book, which this is one that sort of made sense to me and really struck a chord, called Emergence, Volume 1, Introduction, by a lady called Rosemary Wilkes. And in it, as you can see, there's a spiral on the cover, and it's about a thing called spiral dynamics. Anyone heard of that? Yeah, one or two. Okay. And it's about how humans behave, and it sort of groups them into different groups according to how they're influenced, partly by their environment, not just in the present, but over human history, if you like. And it's used by big companies who see different people who are at different levels, if you like. And it was actually developed by two New York psychologists, Don Beck and Christopher Cowan, and they had been influenced by the earlier work of a guy called Clare Graves. And it looks how humans are influenced by their environment and their value systems. And they've split up all these different ways that humans behave, if you like, into 8 different stages, which you can see up there. And they gave a colour for each stage. So they start off with the colour of beige right down the bottom. I don't know if you can see it, but that is really about very basic humans back in the Stone Age period, if you like, and how they behaved. They were very animalistic and lived off the land and just basically surviving. And then it goes through different stages of how humans developed. And I'll talk about the orange one because that, they say, is where most people on Earth are at present. They work hard and they play hard. They're always after trying to get some money. They try and live the dream, if you like. They enjoy competition, and they are like sort of not asleep, but just getting on with their lives, and that's it. And then gradually they start waking up a little bit more, and you get to level 8, which is turquoise, which is people who are a bit more altruistic, holistic, spiritual. They see they're more concerned with the world as a whole. They're not in a group just trying to get what they can. And I've sort of been influenced by that, but they've actually said, which is quite interesting, that there's another 9th level, the next level, but we haven't actually got there. It's an unknown level and we've yet to reach it. But I'll say about that in a minute. So this is my sort of take on it, that I call human levels, and I've split up into 5 different levels based on the age of how we go through life. So the first level, I would say, is like the equivalent of a baby, and they're helpless, and that's why I've used the word helpless. They need people nurturing them, keep helping them to stay alive and grow, etc. Then you've got level 2, which is like a child, and I've said it's selfish is the word. I sum that up. It's more, if a child, before they go to school, etc., they're quite demanding. They want everything. They're into everything. They don't think about the world around them. They're just exploring, gathering things, collecting things, if you like. And some humans are still at this stage mentally in their minds. This would be people like terrorists or football hooligans who like violence. They're separated from the rest of society, if you like, and also you get maybe dictators. They've got no feelings for anyone else, and they just go and charge in and hurt lots of people with the way they do things. Then there's level 3, which is like the equivalent of a teenager or a young adult, which is what I say is what most people in the world are like now. And I've used the word competition to sum up this sort of level. People are more together. They get into bigger groups like religious groups or political groups or sporting groups or whatever, business. And this is where the idea of the human race is, that they're all competing. They're all competing against each other. They want the best life possible. They don't think of the cost of it. And their country is important. They're quite patriotic. They're interested in protecting their country, so they'll arm themselves. They're not interested in peace. And this is where I see a lot of the world nowadays. Then we've got level 4, which is more mature adult. You've reached full adult stage, and the word I use is awake. People at this level have got an understanding of life. They've been searching for answers. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? Is there more to life than this? They've woken up, if you like, and they see the world in a different way than the level 3s. And they say, there is no enemy, we're all one. They're not involved in the drama of life. Instead, they're watching it from the wings, if you like, or looking down on life. And as a result of this, they start changing the way they do things, such as they might not eat meat anymore, become vegetarians. They might be concerned about the environment and get involved in caring for the planet, or they might develop the spiritual side of things, and they might get into meditation or healing, or become more psychic and develop their psychic gifts, etc. And then finally, level 5, equivalent of an old person who's lived their lives. They know what life's all about. They're not worried about anything. They don't want anything. And the word I've used is love, obviously. This, again, is like the equivalent of the coral level that they've said. Not anyone, very few people have got to that level. It's the idea of ascension that some people say, that we're going into the 5th dimension, we're raising our vibrations. They just love people. They can't lie. Nothing matters anymore. They're not worried about the future. The future will take care of itself. And they see the world will change for the better. But more of that in a minute. So, that's just a little idea that I've had, and maybe it needs tweeting, developing, or whatever. Can't really see that. Oh, there you are. The future. What's the future? Big question mark. Right. Before I go into some possible futures, I'd just like to say a word about this book. Book of Revelation, which is the last book in the Bible of the New Testament. And I think it's got a lot to answer for. A lot of fundamentalist Christians, conspiracy theorists, etc., use it, quote it. They see from it the end of the world, Third World War, the Antichrist, and second coming of Jesus. Yet it was actually written at the end of the 1st century AD, between the years 90 to 100 AD. This is what scholars say. And it was a type of apocryphal literature which was written originally to encourage Christians who were under persecution from the Romans. And the atmosphere at that time, the Romans had recently destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. They put down this big rebellion by the Jewish people, and a lot of people were quite depressed about the way things were going. So it was written, it says, for 7 different churches, which at that time, it wasn't really the Christian religion. It was more like a Jewish sect, as people said. And the idea of Babylon is really a reference to the Roman Empire, and the Antichrist is the Roman Emperor himself. But a lot of early Christians back then had this idea of Jesus coming back again to sort out the Romans and take over the world again. It's called the Parousia. And all through history, ever since then, people have said, and they've used Revelation as an example, this is the end of the world is coming. It happens in every century. You can look it up on the internet. It's quite fascinating, really. But for example, in the year 999, with the end of one millennium, a new millennium starting, they thought that was when the world was going to end. And then, of course, we had it in 1999 with new millennium starting then. A lot of people thought, oh, that's going to be the end of the world. And again in 2012. Yet, everyone makes these predictions, the world's going to end, and it doesn't. We just keep going. So, something to bear in mind, have a think about. But let's see what the experts say. Right, that is a thing called the Doomsday Clock, which I'm sure some of you will have heard. It's actually an idea put forward by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists back in 1947, shortly after the first 2 atomic bombs had been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. And it's not really a prediction as such, it's more of a metaphor of how the world, close we are getting to the end of the world. For example, it's based on things like the possibility of nuclear warfare, climate change, and more recently AI, artificial intelligence. So that's where we are. It used to be 2 minutes to midnight. It's now 90 seconds, but it actually stayed the same from 2023 to 2024, so it didn't get any closer. But that's how they feel. It's just their ideas, if you like. So, what are the main threats to human existence? Well, let me show you this picture first to illustrate this. Here's some words from a song which was written back in 1973, which is originally about the state of America, but it could be to do with any country in the modern world now. We kill our children, we swap our wives, we've learnt to greet a man with knives, we swallow pills in 4s and 5s, our cities look like crumbling hives, man does not live, he merely survives. And that is a crumbling hive, if you like. It's actually a block of flats in Hong Kong. And I've used that to illustrate the idea of population, because a lot of people see the spiralling population of the world as a possible threat to humanity. That's a graph from a website called Worldometer, which is quite interesting. It's put together lots of facts and figures about the world, and it shows in real time the number of people being born, the number of people dying, and it reckons roughly that there are twice as many people being born every day that are dying every day, so the population is still going up. And from that you can see how level it was for many hundreds of years, and then it started to move up when we had the Industrial Revolution, and then in the last century it's just shot up, and it's now just over 8 billion, and it's that sort of shows what they predict. It's going to go up to 9 billion, and then it's going to peak and eventually come down. Who knows? But the idea is that population could eventually destroy us because there's too many of us. They reckon the idea of a sustainable Earth has long gone several years ago, so that there's not enough food to go around, there's overcrowding of cities, rising crime levels, breakdown of society, and as you know, lots of wars going on. So that's one possible scenario that could affect the world, us as humans in the future. Another one is often in the news, the environment, the idea of global warming, climate change, lots of weather records being broken every month, the highest amount of rainfall in February, lots of winds and so on, all leading to the melting of the ice caps. And that just illustrates some of the things that are happening with our weather, getting flooding, forest fires, drought. Everything is out of balance. And going back to the lady called Lorna Byrne that I mentioned, she believes that, and a lot of people do, that the Earth is a living thing, and people call it Mother Gaia or whatever. And she says that the Earth is getting frustrated, cross with the way humans are treating the Earth, and all the volcanoes erupting and the earthquakes happening is a sign that she's getting impatient, and she might just decide to get rid of humans off the Earth. Just an idea, but that's one other thing. The idea of the carbon footprint and the burning of fossil fuels all the time, animals going extinct because of the way we treat the environment, and then also connected with this, the idea of waste. We as humans are consumers. We consume food, goods, whatever. There's all this trade going on in the world, and that's an example of a nice tropical island, and the beach is just covered in plastics that might have been thrown off passing ships, might have come down rivers from other countries and then flown across the oceans. Obviously, all the sea life is being attacked and killed, and the idea of single-use plastics is not a good idea. And so some people say we could be destroyed by all the waste we're producing, because what we produce has got to go somewhere. Obviously, recently you've had all in the news about the water companies just getting rid of raw sewage straight into the rivers, not spending money to stop this, instead giving the money to all the shareholders. So that's another possible scenario. And then another thing recently in the news, AI, artificial intelligence. It's basically a way of problem solving using computer programs to think things through that humans couldn't do, or take so long, and it does it quicker. But what people are scared of is the fact that it's like super intelligence, that the artificial intelligence that they've created could somehow take over one day. I think at the moment it's the humans behind it who are the danger, because as you've seen with artificial intelligence, you can get people's voices and make them say things they haven't said. So perhaps a dictator might use that against their political opponents and say they've said this and don't support them or whatever. And also the idea that people can use it to create super viruses. Obviously we've had COVID and all that's involved. They say that we can make ones much worse than that, because the AI knows how to do this, and that could destroy humanity. And then another aspect of it is that it could be used to create super weapons. People think, we're going to defend our country, but it could be quite dangerous and a lot worse for humans that way. So that's another thing. And then, sorry to be going on like this, another one, war, or nuclear war. Obviously, we've been arming ourselves for thousands of years, and our weapons that we've made have got more sophisticated, more deadly. And in my book I have a section where our highly evolved being comes down to Earth and visits a weapons factory. I've said it in Pakistan, but it could be in India, China, North Korea, France, Britain, America. There's actually hundreds, if not thousands, of all these factories all over the world producing weapons, all ready to kill people. Our highly evolved being sees all these bullets being made, all these shells being made, It says, why are humans so stupid? So, but apart from just basic weapons, we've got nuclear weapons, and again, they've actually got stronger and stronger and more deadly than the first ones they had in the Second World War. So the idea with having nuclear weapons is that it's called a policy called MAD, mutually assured destruction. If you send a nuclear bomb to our country, we'll send one to yours. And this has led to the fact that not only Russia and America, they were the first two to start having the nuclear arms race, but we've got Britain, France, India, Pakistan, Israel and North Korea, as far as we know, who've got nuclear weapons, allegedly. And all it takes is one person to pull the trigger. Back in the 80s, we had the big Green and Common protest, which obviously showed strength of feeling. And the rumour is that Ronald Reagan watched this documentary or film about the nuclear explosion and what happened, and as a result of it, he changed his views on it, and this is when Gorbachev came into power as well, and as a result, both those countries started to reduce their nuclear arsenal, but they reckon that there are still thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons about. On that subject, I mentioned Dr. Stephen Greer, who I'm sure a lot of you know, who did the Disclosure Project, and he had all these different military people talking and saying about them. And one guy, I remember saying that he was in this nuclear silo ready to set off a nuclear weapon, and there was a UFO above, and he reckoned it stopped it from working. So maybe, out there there's all these ETs ready to stop that happening. Well, so far we haven't had them, but there is a website, I don't know the name of it, that you can see, and it shows all the nuclear explosions that have gone on through testing since 1945 and all over the world, and it's thousands and thousands. So it's a bit scary. And then the one that I see, perhaps just a theory of mine, the biggest threat to humanity is this: money. People would say that all these other things, these threats, money is behind it. There's a saying, money is the root of all evil, and money seems to be out of control. It obviously started off as a way of exchanging goods and so on, but false money has been created. A lot of it is just figures on a computer nowadays. And there's a saying, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And it wasn't that long ago we talked in terms of millions of pounds and things. Nowadays it's normal to say billions, and you have billionaires, etc. And then the other day on the news I saw America was talking about some budget, and they said trillions for the first time. I mean, how long will it be before we have trillionaires? I don't know. But what do some billionaires do with all their money? They create rockets to go into space, to go to other planets. Maybe they know something that we don't know. But when you think of all the things going on in the world where money would help solve some of these problems, why are there so many billionaires? Why do they have to hold on to their money? I see it a bit like a balloon getting bigger and bigger, and then one day it's going to burst. So maybe one day we might not have money. Who knows? Right, I've probably depressed you all then, so I think it's time for another joke. Okay, so one day the Pope comes to town, and everyone wants to see him and shake his hand, maybe get a blessing from him. And then there's this young guy, say he's called Billy, and he manages to push his way to the front and manages to get the attention of the Pope. And the Pope says, how can I help you, my son? And Billy says, can you help me with my hearing, Father? So the Pope says, yeah, sure, come here. So Pope puts his hands on Billy's ears, says a little prayer, and when he's finished, he says to Billy, now how's your hearing now? Has that helped your hearing? And Billy says, I don't know, Holy Father. My hearing's not until next Wednesday. They reckon laughter is the best form of medicine, you know. So if you ever get depressed, watch some program that's funny, see a comedian or whatever. I mean, comedians are big business nowadays. They don't just play theatres. Some of them play these arenas, just like some of these musicians, you know. So comedians are very popular, and there's obviously a little bit in the book about comedians, would you believe? But yeah, laughter is the best form to make you better. So, I've said all the negative things. What about balancing out a bit with something more positive? Well, this is another book I've read which gives an idea of what someone predicts for the future. Diana Cooper, which I'm sure some of you will have heard of, she's written several books, again, got a big following of people, and she predicts that there's going to be a golden age. The world's not going to end, it's going to get better. And it goes back to this idea of the fifth dimension that we're meant to be ascending to, the idea of the Great Awakening, or the big paradigm shift, if you like. And some of the things she says, quite interesting. She says there'll be lots of new technologies, some that we can't even think about nowadays, which will help us. There won't be any things like planes or trains or cars, no pollution, because we'll just be able to think and then we're there. Or there won't be any shops, there won't be any money, because we won't need to buy things. We share things. And if we want to get some food, we just think of it and we manifest it. And the idea, it's like heaven on earth is coming. She actually reckons, which is, I never think it's a good idea to predict, but she says it's going to happen from 2032, just 8 years away. And it's going to get better and better till it peaks at 2050. Who knows? But that's just an idea, just to show that some people think it's not all doom and gloom. It is going to get better. I'd just like to move on to some other things which I've put as what on earth's happening. Lots of things, mysterious things are happening to people, and here's just one example. 11/11. I'm sure you've all heard of that idea, the idea of synchronicity, which was coined by Carl Jung back in last century. People say we keep seeing that number 11/11 or 111, or you see them on your alarm clocks, you see them on your car mileometer or whatever, you see it on music playing on a system, and it just suddenly strikes you. There's the same numbers together. The writer Colin Wilson, who I'm sure you will have heard of, who I think is probably one of the greatest writers of the 20th century and philosophers, he had this affecting him. He kept waking up in the middle of the night, looking at his alarm clock, and it kept saying 4:44. And it was driving him mad. That's just one example. Is it more than coincidence? Does it really happen? Well, I've actually taken to recording when it does happen to me, because it's happened quite a few times, to be honest. I'm sure it might have happened to you. This is just one example. That's my current bank account at the top, £1,000.43, and that's the amount of money I own on my credit card, 1,043 pence. Crazy. I must admit, I haven't got that much in it now, but that just sort of struck me one day. It was a few months ago, and I had to take a picture of it because it was unbelievable almost. I sometimes find, I don't know about you, but I'm saying a word and someone on the television, on the radio, says the same word at exactly the same time. Anyone happen to that? I've seen one or two. Yeah, so it does happen. So people say we're being looked after in a way. It's a sign that angels or spirit guides or our ancestors are keeping an eye on us. Or, is it just coincidence? And then there's another phenomenon which some people have, the white feather experience. It's getting a few nods as well. And this is the cover of an album by a friend of mine, Del Bromman, and he actually wrote a song about it because he lost his daughter to cancer a few years ago, and one day he was just thinking about her and all of a sudden a white feather appeared. Some people say it sometimes happens outside, sometimes inside, and some people again say it's a sign from the angels or spirit guides or whatever. And he happened to write this song, but it's happened to me as well. I was taking the washing off the line one day, as you do, and all of a sudden a white feather dropped down right in front of me. Couldn't see any birds, wasn't windy or anything, so I thought, who's it to do with? I immediately got a picture in my mind of my mother. I thought, okay. And then when I went inside, I suddenly realised that day was her birthday. So, who knows? So, people would say we are being watched at, we're being looked after, whether whoever it is, I don't know, but it's up to you what you believe, and that there is hope. Another thing I quickly mention is the idea of reincarnation. Some people say we're living several lives, we're learning, and there was a guy called Michael Newton who was a Canadian psychologist, and he was using regression therapy, just going back to people's early days to sort out their psychological problems. And I don't know, quite by chance, he went back to being a baby, and then he suddenly went back to before the person was born, to the afterlife, or the interlife as he called it. And he was quite a strong atheist before then, and he had so many of these cases where he could regress people back to before they were born, and even back to previous lives, that he changed his view. And he wrote a famous book called Life Between Lives. And another person is Dolores Cannon, who I've mentioned. Ian has actually interviewed her a few years ago, and she's written so many books again. She got into past life regression therapy quite by chance, and it was her husband who was doing it first, and she followed suit, and she found she was able to do it. And in her lifetime, she actually recorded every session she did and then made notes. And she's written so many books. I mean, perhaps one of the most famous is Convoluted Universe. And she has been able to find different answers about life, death, aliens, if you like, what's the purpose of life, where do we go, etc. And again, I've put her on my book list of possible reading if you want to take a sheet over there. And then finally, I can't stop without saying something about paranormal happenings, because obviously a lot of people are into that as well. There's a program I've watched quite a few times called Paranormal Caught on Camera. A few nods, yeah. Quite a fascinating program. It's American, but it's based on the idea that nowadays we have security cameras, we have doorbell phones that capture things, and a lot of it is things that they've captured. I mean, there's bits on UFOs, bits on, say, like Bigfoot, bits on poltergeists and things like that, and ghosts. Some of the things that strike me, there was one where there were these swings just going to and fro in America at a child's playground, no wind about, and how did that happen? Or there was a film that a security camera had taken at a Catholic school in Cork in Ireland, in the entrance hall, and there was a filing cabinet, and all of a sudden you see the filing cabinet open and all these papers go flying about. Or in Manchester there was an office camera, and there's these swivel chairs, and they go all around the room. So, obviously there's different things going on behind the scenes. Our friend Derek Savoy sort of mentioned the fact that there's so many unseen forces about all around us that we can't see, that some people who are perhaps a bit more psychic than others see them or understand them. And, that's something to bear in mind. I had a poltergeist, a haunting experience once, which I'll tell you about if you're interested. About 20 years ago, my wife and I used to go to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and if you go there, you're best to go as really early as possible. So we decided to rent a self-catering place just outside Bicester. It was about 20 minutes drive, so it was quite close. And the first night we were there, just felt a little bit strange atmosphere, and we went to bed, and we just couldn't get to sleep because we kept hearing this rustling sound like something was going through our bags. Could it have been a mouse or a rat or something? And it sort of unnerved you a little bit. And then eventually got to sleep, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, the microwave suddenly turned on. So what's going on there? We actually didn't go there the following year, but for our sins, we went back and stayed there again. This time I was a little bit more prepared, and I, did all sort of protection rituals, if you like, or whatever. And I still heard this banging coming from the ceiling. It was like the, slow banging, which is associated with poltergeists. And I said to my wife, "Did you hear that?" And she said, "No." So why did I hear it and not her? So lots of strange things. And another story I'll tell you is about crop circles. Obviously, I've been into them, and we've got Andy Thomas coming in July, who's quite an expert on crop circles, amongst other things, also conspiracies. He's written probably the best book on conspiracies, in my opinion, just simply called Conspiracies, but he looks at both sides of the argument and everything. So anyway, we went to this crop circle. Ian was with me. It was just south of Avebury in this field, and nowadays I would say maybe 80-90% of crop circles are man-made. I mean, there's groups of people who call themselves the circle makers who go and create them and so on, but there's always say 10%. Now this particular crop circle was pretty massive, and I went in and I was pretty sure it's a genuine one for two reasons. Firstly, the actual stalks that had been bent of the corn, they weren't sort of crushed, they'd just been bent over like an L shape, and it was like some sort of heat or radiation had bent them. And then secondly, there was this helicopter flying above us. Now, if it wasn't the genuine crop circle, what were the military doing? Obviously they could be filming the people in it, but this helicopter wasn't just an ordinary helicopter, it was a black helicopter, completely black, no markings. And I've heard about it happening in America, and I was quite surprised. But two things which were quite unusual. It sort of kept buzzing and going over us, and then all of a sudden it started going away. And I think I said to Ian, "Oh, it's going at long last." As soon as I said those words, it suddenly came back, so it could hear what I was saying. And then there was another girl in this crop circle who actually took a picture of it, and she showed us that. And Ian kept in contact with her, and then she's only about 30s, but a couple of years after that, she died. I don't know, is the connection there or not? So lots of things going on in the world that we can't explain, or we try and explain. But I think most people here would say we are being watched over, we're being guided. And in the book at the end, originally I'd put the ending that there's no hope, humans, unless they suddenly change, they're going to destroy themselves. But I thought, no, you've got to have hope, because think of the story of Pandora's box, where she opens the box and all these evils and bad things come into the world, and then she shuts it, and then there's this banging, and she opens it, and out pops hope. So what I finish off with is this question: what's your vision? What's your vision for the future? How do you see the world panning out? What sort of world would you like? I said earlier that we're all creators, and a lot of people argue that we create our future. So the idea of living in the present is obviously important, but what sort of world would we like it to be when we think of our children or grandchildren that they're going to inherit? How do you see the world? Are you reactive to what goes on, or are you proactive? Are you doing something? Obviously, it's something that you need to think about. And one final bit is of some words from Dolores Cannon. The future will take care of itself. I have no worries about it. Is that your future? I mean, one of my favourite phrases is, life is what you make it. So I'd finish there and just say, I am a human being. Thank you.